Robert, do you want to sort of introduce everybody?
I'm Robert Stone. I'm the producer and director of the film. This is Stuart Brand, Gwyneth Cravens, Mark Linus, Michael Schellenberger, all of whom started off being very anti-nuclear. What we've done here with this movie is to take a different tack. And it's not like coming at you in your face and saying, oh, you're wrong, this is why you're wrong. It's we are you. You have to look at the worst case scenarios that have happened with even the most ridiculously designed reactor ever built, which is the one at Chernobyl. The worst case scenario turns out to be not the apocalypse that we all thought it was. I trust the United Nations and the World Health Organization that's done the definitive studies on this, and their conclusion is that Chernobyl has killed 56 people, which was probably the most astonishing fact I came across in making the whole film. So if you look at all of the various ways that we produce energy and figure out the deaths per terawatt, how many people die per unit of energy produced. Nuclear is the second safest after wind. But even the reactors that are these gargantuan things that were sort of a crazy thing to be built anyway, have turned out to be remarkably safe.
I just wanted to add one thing that changed my mind about nuclear power, which was visiting nuclear plants and other nuclear facilities and nuclear waste repositories and so on. Seeing it for yourself, you realize how many barriers there are between the public and the radioactive material. And if people were more used to these plants, which look formidable in the distance because of their giant cooling towers and stuff, if people were educated early on about how nuclear power worked and what radiation can and cannot do, I think that would help significantly.
One of the main stories in the film is the development of the integral fast reactor. You know, this was a reactor that was, they tried to melt it down. We have film of it, and those of you who haven't seen the film, there's film of them trying to melt the thing down twice. They ran through shutting off all of the safety devices, just letting the thing completely run wild and sitting back, not touching anything, not touching the dials, and the thing just passively shut itself down. As the reactivity as it got hotter, the reactivity diminished and it shut itself down.
If I had to characterize the film, I would say it's an elaborate hoax. Almost every fact in it that's presented as facts is untrue or misleading. I want to say this about my own attitude towards nuclear, which is that I'm all for it if they can ever make it safe and if they can ever make it economical. And so far, it's neither. In this country, a nuclear power plant cannot get insurance because the people on Wall Street have carefully assessed it and said, you are too expensive, you are too risky to insure. So the industry had to go to Congress and get an act passed called the Price-Anderson Act, which exempts them from the risk of running a nuclear power plant. It's the only industry in this country that is exempt from risks of accidents at its own facilities. And I'm not presenting myself as an expert on nuclear power, but I know enough about it just from fighting Indian Point to know that many of the things that were said in this film were first of all, industry propaganda. The whole premise of the film, that these are leading nuclear activists, is untrue. So they're not environmentalists, and they were not ever anti-nuclear activists. I think 4 or 5 of the people are associated with the Breakthrough Institute, which is an anti-environmental think tank in Washington, D.C. that works in partnership with the American Enterprise Institute, Ted Nordhaus and Michael Schellenberger.
Wait. Evolution or anything?
I would not believe the World Health Organization.
Okay.
Because of its strong relationship. It is what we call a captive agency. Because of the international.
Who do you believe?
Wait.
Do you believe the IPCC?
No, hold on. No, just let's stick with the WHO. WHO, maybe we shouldn't believe them, because a few years ago they said 150,000 people a year were already dying of global warming, and that was actually not correct either.
What I'm saying is that they are not a credible source when it comes to estimating risks from nuclear energy because of their
So who is?
well-known relationship
What?
with the International Atomic Energy Commission, which is one of the greatest promoters of nuclear energy
power.
on the planet. I told you the Finnish reactor is costing $11 billion a gigawatt. This technology is 1.5 to 2 times as expensive as that. Okay, breeder technology is much more expensive. It's also less reliable. It also has it's sodium cooled. Sodium is reactive, violently reactive, both to water and to air. We know what it does, and we know that when they built them, it was a waste of money. That the one that they built, the Super Phoenix, which is the most famous one that they built in France, gave 7% of the energy that it was expected to, and had to close after 15 years. The Manju plant that they built in Japan, which was the flagship of this kind of technology, had a fire in it and had to close down. The Kalkar plant, which was the flagship of the German breeder reactor effort,
Bobby,
they never
Bobby,
put plutonium in it,
come on,
and it
come on,
was
come on.
used.
This is
it
as
is
bad-
used as an amusement park, and it is the only one of these plants to ever make money.
I mean, it's
all
just-
of them
it's
closed
just-
down, Robert. Every one of them closed down because they were unreliable and they were
The
dangerous. and
IFR
they were
ran perfectly.
hideously
The
expensive.
IFR
But
ran
let me tell
perfectly
you,
for 30 years.
yeah, half of them operated okay, half of them
Okay,
had
well, that's
accidents.
pretty good for an experimental thing. So the IFR that is referred to in the film has been commercialized by General Electric. It's called the Prism Reactor, and it's got the support of Greenpeace and Friends of the Earth. Why? Because Great Britain wants to get rid of their stockpile of weapons-grade plutonium, and this is a way to do it and generate electricity at the same time.
Okay, and here's what the problem is with that, and what they should have told us in the film, but they didn't, is that the repositories that we build to store that nuclear waste, the size of those repositories is not dictated by the volume of the waste. It is dictated by the thermal profile. And that smaller amount is much, much, much hotter. So you have to build the repository the exact same size because you have to put each bundle of waste far enough away from the other that they won't work together to generate
That's
a critical
absolutely
mass
true.
that will heat the rock
That's
and
absolutely
cause
true.
an accident. So it's not really changing anything in the long run. Your repository has to be the exact same size. But they point to it and say, oh, look, it's only a football field. That couldn't be harmful. But in fact, it can be very, very harmful because it's much more radioactive than the stuff you started out with.